The average prices of gasoline and diesel surged after declining for 11 consecutive weeks, according to the Korea National Oil Corporation.
한국석유공사가 공개한 자료에서 그간 11주 연속 하락세를 보이던 국내 휘발유와 경유 평균 가격이 오름세로 돌아선 것으로 나타났습니다.
Yep.
Tell us more.
So as of Saturday, this past Saturday, the average price of gasoline rose 6.2 won compared to the previous week to reach 1,591.6 won. And likewise, diesel prices rose 4.9 won on week to 1,421.5 won. And this goes counter to what global oil prices are doing right now. Global oil prices are actually falling when it was known that Israel was not going to strike petroleum and nuclear facilities in Iran.
Yeah.
The Dubai crude, which serves as South Korea's benchmark, dropped last week. But usually changes in international or global oil prices are reflected with about a 2 to 3 week delay. So expect in a couple of weeks for the prices at the pump to hopefully go down.
Prices at the pump. 이게 바로 주유 가격, 휘발유 가격, 경유 가격, 주유소의 그 가격이 되겠습니다. Prices at the pump. 펌프라는 게 우리가 이제 주유할 때 쓰는 그 기구죠. 근데 이제 비유적으로 그게 주유소라는 의미가 되겠고요. 그 다음에는 보통 이제 그 해외에서 발표가 되는 그 oil prices가 국내에 반영이 되기까지는 시간이 좀 걸립니다. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks until those prices are reflected in the Korean market, I suppose.
You know, there's been a lot of criticism with local oil companies or gas companies, providers, where when global oil prices go up, they immediately will hike prices at the pump. Whereas on the flip side, when global oil prices go down, there's a bit of a delay in going down. And there's been some criticism about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When it comes to reading numbers, there's two ways of reading the numbers that we have here. So for example, gas prices, you can either say 1,591 or 1,591, I suppose.
Yeah.
Although normally you put the something 100 when it ends with just a sort of 00.
Yeah, I suppose when the ones and tens column are zeros, it's a lot easier like that. But usually, you know, typically this is something from broadcast radio, from my experience in news. We have a rule called the two significant number rule, because over broadcast, as a listener, when I say 1,591.61, for the listener, it's very hard to comprehend that. So usually I'll say just under 1,600 won or just over 1,400
That's a good
won.
point. 맞습니다. 우리가 텍스트가 없이 귀로만 들었을 때 특히 영어로 숫자를 말하게 되면은요. 이게 굉장히 말이 길어질수록 전혀 숫자가 그려지지가 않죠. 그래서 방송에서는 가능하면은 숫자를 좀 간소화해서 듣는 사람으로 하여금 바로 다른 일을 하면서 듣다가도 이 그림이 딱 그려지게끔 그래서 1,591원을 조금 전에 얘기했지만
0.61. There's even a decimal point in that, so it's even harder.
1,591.16원 요게 이제 구체적인 숫자였지만 이거를 말하기에 앞서서는 1,600원이 좀 안 됐습니다. 이렇게 먼저 말하고 그 다음에 이제 긴 숫자를 얘기를 하죠.
Especially in radio, because on TV, you at least have graphics that you can use your eyes with. But with radio, it's simply through the ears. So usually with numbers, you try to generalize them a little bit.
Exactly. So in other words, you'd probably say it's just under 1,600 won. More specifically, 1,591.16 or something like that. Okay. All right, let's have a look at our main expression, to surge.
Yeah, simply it means to climb or to grow, to increase. But when something surges, you're usually thinking of something in liquid form, or electricity can surge as well. But here we're talking about gas prices, right?
Exactly. To surge. Think of a wave. Think of something going up all of a sudden.
Those, those multi-tap electrical cord outlets are called surge protectors because they protect from a sudden surge of electricity to something like your computer.
I didn't know they were called surge protectors.
In the US, at least, I think. Yeah, surge protectors.
Okay. You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
자, 그다음에 I guess this is the opposite.
The opposite,
to decline.
To decline means to go down, right? A decline is a slope downward, right? To descend. But here it just means to decrease or to diminish.
네, to surge 그리고 to decline 둘 다 이제 동사로 보게 되면은요. 급증하다, 줄어들다. Here's the headline again. The average prices of gasoline and diesel surged after declining for 11 consecutive weeks, according to the Korean National Oil Corporation. Here's our next headline.
The Israeli army has released footage showing Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and his family in an underground Gaza tunnel, reportedly taken hours before Hamas launched its attack on October 7th last year.
이스라엘군이 팔레스타인 무장정파 하마스의 수장 야이야 신와르와 그의 가족의 모습이 담긴 가자지구 땅굴 촬영 영상을 공개했습니다. 이 영상은 하마스가 지난해 10월 7일 이스라엘 기습 공격을 개시하기 몇 시간 전에 촬영된 것으로 보입니다.
Yeah, so Sinwar, he is Hamas's top, or was, I should say now,
Yeah.
Hamas's top figure in the Gaza Strip, and he's accused of actually masterminding that attack last year on October 7th, and he was killed last week by Israeli forces in
Right.
quite a or it's kind of a, I don't know if you see the footage, but he was cornered in a building of rubble, and you
Right.
could see him throwing a piece of wood at the drone that was
quite
actually
dramatic then,
It was
yeah.
very dramatic. Yes, that was the word. But this footage that was recently released, shot just hours, like we said, before the attack, shows him and his family going through this underground bunker. And what the Israeli spokesperson is saying is that, hey, look at this. This is an example of how Sinwar, he doesn't care about the Gazan people or the Palestinians. It's more about, he's more interested in his family. And so say what you will about how this footage is being used in terms of Israel, but that's what we saw here.
그래요. 자, 이런 영상이 공개가 됐습니다. 이스라엘 측에서 공개를 한 영상이에요. 그래서 팔레스타인 무장정파 하마스의 수장이었던 지금은 살아있지 않습니다. 그래서 야이야 신와르가 7월 10일 이스라엘 기습 공격을 개시하기 바로 직전에 했던 모습으로 보여지는 그런 영상을 공개한 거죠. 이 정도로 무자비했다. 이거를 얘기하고 싶은 겁니다. 자, 영상. You can say video, I guess, but in the news, we like to use the word footage.
Footage, yeah. This is interesting. Footage
Yeah.
is any sort of recorded video material.
Yes.
And if you look back where this word comes from, it originated actually when old 35 millimeter film movies were measured and cut by the foot. And that equaled about 1 second of footage. They're saying 16 frames. So that's where this comes from. But we can talk about this security footage, this drone footage,
Yeah.
CCTV footage, anything that's recorded.
I didn't know the history of the word footage.
The word foot is in there.
Yeah. 1 foot is 30 centimeters?
Roughly. It's about 27, 28 centimeters, I think. Yeah.
그런 어원이 있었군요. 뉴스에선 정말 많이 씁니다. 그래서 보통 이제 뉴스캐스터나 아나운서가 이제 자 여러분 영상 보시겠습니다 할 때 그 영상에 해당되는 게 이 footage라는 건데요.
Yep.
우리가 소셜 미디어에 올리는 건 footage라고 하지 않아요. 그건 그냥 비디오예요.
Right.
네.
There's another term, stock footage. Stock footage would be any sort of generic video material. So when you watch the news, sometimes you'll see, file footage. That's you'll see a little word on the top that says file, like 자료화면. When it's not specifically related to the story, but it helps give a timeline and an idea of what's happening.
자료화면, file footage. 그래요. 어떤 이제 사건 같은 것을 다루고 있는 그런 영상, 그런 자료들을 우리가 보게 될 때 footage라는 표현을 씁니다. 스펠링은요, F-O-O-T-A-G-E 이렇게 되고요. And to launch something.
Yeah, launch simply means to begin or initiate, start something, like a rocket launch.
Exactly. 시작하다, 착수하다, 뭐 발사하다가 될 수도 있고요. 다 launch, L-A-U-N-C-H가 되겠습니다.
And not like our 무모한 문장.
No,
That's
not
lunch.
lunch.
Yes, exactly.
A 하나 빠지면은 점심이 돼버리죠.
Different pronunciation. Launch, lunch.
네, 이거 너무 좋은 포인트네요. 저는 발음을 조금 다르게 하는데 그래도 점심과의 발음은 확연히 다릅니다. 네, 한 번만 더 그러면 우리 시작하다 그리고 점심.
Right. To launch and you eat lunch.
저는
Launch, lunch.
그렇습니다. 저는 to launch and lunch.
Launch.
To launch and lunch. 이렇게 좀 다르죠, 발음이 살짝.
Yeah.
자, 다시 한번 제가 읽어볼게요. The Israeli army has released footage showing Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and his family in an underground Gaza tunnel, reportedly taken hours before Hamas launched its attack on October 7th last year.
A flood warning has been issued for Alaska's capital, Juneau, following an outburst from a glacial lake in the area.
미국 알래스카주의 주도인 주노에 있는 빙하 호수에서 댐이 터져 물이 넘치면서 이 지역에 홍수 경보가 발령됐습니다.
Yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, unless you live in a climate like this where glaciers exist, but what's called a glacial lake outburst flood. It's an outburst of sort of high energy, low frequency flood involving the release of a large quantity of water. And what happens is that a basin will fill with rainwater and snowmelt during the spring and the summer. And then when the pressure builds so much, it actually releases it with water being sent down. And in August of this year, about nearly 300 residents were actually were damaged because of floodwaters into their neighborhoods. And it's been happening every year since 2011. And Juneau is a very small city, about 30,000 people, and it's only reachable by plane or by boat. So any skeptics about climate change who think that, because when you think climate change, you think it's something that's far in the future, years and decades, centuries ahead of us. But climate change is actually affecting us now. People are being displaced as we speak.
When people are displaced, that means they're not able to go home
Right.
because for some reason their home is either damaged or it's, in this case, flooded. It could be an earthquake, it could be a landslide, whatever it is. They cannot go home.
Right, and they need to be relocated somewhere.
Yes.
So a lot of people who live in low-lying areas are already being and feel the effects of climate change.
Yeah, low-lying areas being areas that are quite low down, and so they're prone to flooding.
Exactly.
Way more than higher areas where, you're a little bit... I guess I wouldn't say you're safe, but safer than the people in the low-lying areas. All right, what's a flood warning?
Yeah, a flood warning would just be a notice or an alert that's issued when flooding is imminent or actually happening, as it is as well. I saw a TV show just last week about, I don't know if you remember Typhoon Memi.
Yeah, I do.
That was a big catastrophe here, and it wasn't so much the winds, but more the flooding that happened after that. But, flood warnings are issued when there's a lot of rain, obviously.
warning은 경보고요. flood는 홍수니까 홍수 경보, flood warning. 자, 그다음에 한 단어인데요. An outburst.
Yeah, an outburst is just generally speaking, just this sort of surge of activity or growth, like an eruption, but it can also mean a violent expression of feeling. So an outburst of anger when something explodes, right?
Exactly. So it's out and burst, but it's one word, outburst, 폭발하는 겁니다. 뭔가 쏟아져 나오는 거예요. outburst. burst도 원래는 터진다라는 의미가 있는데 outburst는 그게 좀 더 강조됐다라고 생각하면 될 것 같아요.
Right. You could say something like, sorry to burst your bubble.
Oh, yeah,
right?
exactly.
So a bubble will burst, right? Or it pops.
And that's a really fun expression, actually. Well, not fun if you've actually had your bubble burst.
Right.
But
It's like raining on someone's parade.
Yes.
That's another expression, right?
Yeah.
To burst someone's bubble.
burst someone's bubble. 자, 이 표현 같은 경우에는요, 어떤 거냐면은, 예를 들어서, 셰인 선생님이, 나 너무 좋은 일이 있다. 나 이따가 점심 때 굉장히 맛있는, 한 번도 안 가본 식당 거기 가볼 거거든. 와, 너무 신나! 이러면서, 이제, 나름대로, 즐거움의 버블을 하나 만들어 놨어요. 근데 제가 거기다가 이렇게 톡 터트리는 말을 하는 거예요. 거기 별로야? 이런다든지, 아니면은, 뭔가, 난 거기 가봤는데, 이런, 참 밥맛이죠? 이러네요. I'm bursting your bubble.
Yeah.
네, 이렇게 하면 안 좋지만, 이 표현은 재밌어요. bursting someone's bubble.
Yeah. When someone's on a high, you're really dragging them down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
네, 그래서 분위기를 깬다라고 볼 수도 있습니다. 우리말로는. 그거랑 좀 비슷한데. 네,
Yeah, you're being a Debbie Downer in
a
that
Debbie
case.
Downer. 맞아요. 그렇게 하면 안 좋지만 이 표현은 알아둬라. 이렇게 좀 정리를 할 수 있을 것 같고요. 그래서 여기서는 그냥 burst가 아니라 outburst. 뭔가가 분출하고 쏟아져 나오는 것을 말하고 있습니다. 자, 다시 읽어볼게요. A flood warning has been issued for Alaska's capital, Juneau, following an outburst from a glacial lake in the area. Here's our next headline.
A study has suggested that standing desks do not compensate for being inactive and may even increase the risk of conditions such as swollen veins and blood clots in the legs.
서서 사용할 수 있도록 만들어진 책상인 스탠딩 데스크가 운동 부족의 결점을 상쇄하지 못하며 오히려 하지정맥류와 심부정맥 혈전증 같은 문제가 발생할 위험을 높일 수 있다는 연구 결과가 나왔습니다.
Yeah, there was a big trend of standing desks. I remember my office used to have them as well. But what researchers in Australia found were that if you stand for more than 2 hours a day, it actually increases the risk of developing problems like deep vein thrombosis and varicose veins.
In your legs.
In your legs, yeah. What they did was they studied more than 83,000 adults. They did not have any heart disease at the start of the study, and they wore devices on their wrists. And they found that for every additional 30 minutes spent standing beyond 2 hours increased the risk of circulatory diseases by 11%. And that standing actually does not reduce the risk of things like stroke, heart failure, and of the sort. So it runs counter to what people were thinking, that standing up actually is better than sitting down all day with your posture, hunched,
crouched,
crouched over.
Yeah.
So people thought standing up would be better, but then it creates a whole bag of other problems.
Yeah, exactly. Standing desk. 여러분도 혹시 써보셨나요? 쓰고 계시나요? 이게 뭐 장점도 많이 있습니다. 서서 일하면은 이제 앉아서 이게 자세도 안 좋아지고 그러는 것보다는 이게 바느하게 서서 일하면 좋다고 하는데 너무 오랫동안 특히 여기 2시간 얘기를 조금 전에 하셨어요. If you're at a standing desk for more than 2 hours, you're going to have problems in your legs.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, what was it?
Deep vein thrombosis.
Deep vein thrombosis.
Varicose veins.
Okay.
Right.
Difficult words.
하지정맥, right?
Yeah. Exactly. 그래서 그거를 좀 쉬운 말로 하면은 swollen veins and blood clots라고 표현할 수 있습니다.
Right. And a lot of people actually stand for work, for a living. A lot of people in the service industry need to stand. And this is a problem that they know very well. And I'm sure they'll say, standing desks? You try standing all day and see how your feet hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these standing desks do not compensate for being inactive. Compensate.
Yeah. So when you compensate for something, you're counterbalancing it, you're counteracting or sort of neutralizing or offsetting it. So in this case, they're saying standing up does not compensate for any risk of any health issues. Normally, when you say compensation, you think of pay. And pay is actually you're supplying an equivalent for your services as work. So it's the same meaning there.
Exactly. If, for example, you had a cup of coffee in your hand and I spilt it, then I might say, I'm so sorry. Can I compensate by buying you another cup of coffee?
Can you? You should.
I would like to. I must compensate.
Right.
자, 이렇게 compensate라는 거는요. 뭔가를 보상해주다라는 의미가 있습니다. 여기서 말하는 거는 대체하다 아니면은 상쇄하다 의미로 썼는데 우리가 운동을 하지 않는 대신에 서서 이제 책상을 쓰는 게 원래 목적이었죠. 스탠딩 데스크의 목적이. 그런데 그것을 대체하지 못한다. 상쇄하지 못해요. 이렇게 오랫동안 너무 서 있으면은 오히려 다리에 여러 가지 문제가 생기더라. 그 중에 하나는 blood clots입니다.
Yeah, a blood clot is something that forms when blood coagulates. Right, as a means to heal. And blood, that's a good feature of blood because if you have an injury like a scar, an open wound, you want the blood to sort of coagulate and harden. But it's dangerous when it forms in arteries and veins without an injury, and especially if it happens in your legs, lungs, or even worse, your brain, and that'll cause a stroke or heart attack.
Exactly. blood clot 두 단어고요. blood 뒤에 이제 CLOT가 붙으면 혈전이 되겠습니다. 피가 응고가 된 상태죠. 근데 응고하다라는 이 동사가 좀 어려운데 coagulate라고 합니다.
Yeah, this is how I.
스펠링을 한번.
Yeah, sure.
네.
COAGULATE. And when I describe 선지 to people, I always say it's coagulated blood.
Again, food.
Yeah. Yes. Didn't mean to do that. But
Yeah, 선지. I like 선지.
I love 선지,
You know,
yeah.
the first time I had 선지, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was kind of like tofu,
Yeah,
like black
exactly.
tofu. And I thought, oh, it's nice,
Yeah.
interesting texture, like hard tofu. And then someone explained to me what it was.
Yeah.
And they said, it's blood. And I thought, what?
Did you not eat it in the UK? I know
No.
Brits.
Yeah, they'd have
with
black
blood
pudding.
Pudding.
Black pudding.
They call it black pudding.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They do, but I'd never had it. I think it's
Yeah.
a Scottish thing.
Okay.
I'd never had it before. And then in Korea, it was in this soup. I didn't
Yeah.
know what it was. I had it. I liked it.
Yeah.
And then someone told me what it was, and it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
So I was shocked. But then I thought, it tastes good.
Yeah.
And it's good for your body.
Sometimes it's better
I'll-
not to know.
Exactly. So 여러분 이제 만약에 외국인에게 선지 해장국을 설명한다 하면은 뭐 안 하는 게 나을 수도 있지만 어쨌든 이제 this is blood that's been coagulated.
Coagulated blood.
Yeah. Is it cow's,
Of a cow, I believe,
cow's
yeah.
blood? Okay. Anyway, if you enjoy it, that's all that matters. Here's the headline again. A study has suggested that standing desks do not compensate for being inactive and may even increase the risk of conditions such as swollen veins and blood clots in the legs. Now here's our final headline.
Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, has reportedly fired around 24 employees at its Los Angeles offices for allegedly using their free meal vouchers to purchase household goods instead of food.
네, 페이스북과 인스타그램의 모기업인 메타가 자사가 지급한 식권으로 식사 대신에 생활용품을 구입했다는 이유로 로스앤젤레스에서 근무하는 직원 약 24명을 해고한 것으로 알려졌습니다. I don't quite understand how this could happen. Tell us more.
Sure, let me explain.
Yeah,
So
please.
a lot of these Silicon Valley tech companies, as a benefit to their employees, they offer these extravagant, lavish sort of canteens in their offices. And I visited actually this one company, starting with G, their head offices in California. I had a chance to go to their, their canteen, and it's great. They hire chefs from outside, and you can choose. Their policy is no a beverage within 500 feet of every worker. You know?
Wow.
So they're well fed.
Yep.
They're well drunken. Now these are their head offices, but smaller offices don't necessarily have these benefits with the canteen. So in exchange, for example, I suppose this was a Los Angeles office or branch of Meta, but what they provide is rather a meal voucher. So instead, because they don't have a canteen or they don't offer food at work, they'll give them a free meal voucher. But what these workers were doing, including one unnamed worker on who earns about $400,000, said they use their meal credits to buy other things like household goods such as toothpaste, tea, and of the sort. So one of these people said, anonymously that they when they're not eating at the office. Like if their husband is cooking, for example, they're grabbing dinner with friends, figured, hey, why let these credits go to waste? But they're being abused, and that's a problem, and that was
So you
grounds
can use the food
for release.
coupons to buy other things?
No, that's
Yeah,
the
that's
thing.
right.
That's the whole point.
But
Is that
how
they were
did they manage to do that?
because I think what they do is when you go to a grocery store, you can use these vouchers. They don't sell just food. They sell other items as well.
아, 오케이. 원래는 음식을 사라고 줬던 쿠폰이었는데 그걸로 각종 생필품을 샀군요. 그런 직원이 한 24명 정도가 있었다고 합니다. 그런 이유로 메타에서 해고를 했다. 이런 소식인데요. 자, 이런 음식 쿠폰, 내지는 식권이라고도 할 수 있는데 영어로는 meal voucher.
Voucher. So what I suspect is that maybe they were giving daily cash allowances.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine, I guess.
They back it up with receipts, I'm sure. But
okay.
in any case, a meal voucher. A voucher is a sort of a coupon, right? A form of check indicating a credit against a future purchase or expenditure. You have gift vouchers, you can have travel vouchers or cash vouchers as well. But a meal voucher would be something that's prepaid for something to consume.
우리 가끔 이제 외래어로 우리도 바우처라는 단어를 보셨을지 모르겠어요.
Government vouchers.
네,
too.
그게 바로 이렇게 쓰는 건데요. voucher, voucher. meal voucher니까 식권이 되겠습니다. 자, 그 다음에 household goods.
Yep, a household good is just everyday items used in the home. Clothing, appliances, children's toys, tools, equipment, etc.
생활용품이라고 볼 수 있겠죠. 집에서 쓸 수 있는 물건들이니까 household goods, 생활용품. 자, 그럼 다시 한번 읽어보겠습니다. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, has reportedly fired around 24 employees at its Los Angeles offices for allegedly using their free meal vouchers to purchase household goods instead of food. That's it for the headlines today with Shane.
The prices of Napa cabbage and radish, which are key ingredients in kimchi, have risen by 40 and 25% respectively compared to the same period last year.
주요 김장 재료인 배추와 무 가격이 지난해 같은 기간에 비해 각각 40%와 25% 오른 것으로 집계됐습니다. All right, tell us more.
Well, we had a prolonged heat wave that was lasting until September, and that has caused there to be less cabbages and less radishes. There's been a reduction in the supply, and that means that as of Friday, one Napa cabbage was averaging at 9,123 won, and one radish was averaging at 3,561 won. So it's up around 39.8% higher for the cabbage from last year and 25.4% for the radish from last year.
I mean, we have to have kimchi every single day,
Yes.
and yet it looks like it's getting more and more expensive.
But I know that Kimjang is just around the corner, the
Yeah.
kimchi making season.
Yes.
There is some good news, hopefully. Prices are expected to drop, according to the Agricultural Ministry. They're saying there's going to be an increase in shipments starting late October, just in time for Kimjang.
Oh, that is good news indeed. When we say the key ingredients of something, what are we
Yes.
talking about?
We're talking about the major ingredients, the important ingredients. If you don't have these ingredients, you can't make whatever you're making.
So it's nothing to do with your car keys or your
Oh, no.
house keys.
No, when we use the word key here, and we use it a lot in business as well, it's talking about that vital thing, that important thing, that without it, the thing will not work. So the key to this solution is momomo, or the key to a happy life is knitting.
Maybe. key ingredient라는 거는요, 주요 재료라는 뜻이 있고요. The key to a happy life is knitting. 이런 문장이 만약에 있다고 한다면은 인생을 즐겁게 사는 비결은 니팅이다, 뜨개질이다. 이런 문장이 되겠죠. 그래서 key라는 게 아주 중요하다, 주요하다, 뭐 비법, 비결 이런 의미도 될 수 있습니다. 자, 그 다음으로 respectively.
Meaning each one. When we use the term respectively, we're talking about a number of things, two or more, that have their own something. In this case, we're talking about the price rise. So for cabbage, it rose by 40%. For radish, it rose by 25%. Each one rose differently, but they both rose, so we use respectively here.
Yeah. So if we were to talk about our heights, for
Respectively.
example, we could say Paul and Sue are 7 foot and 5 foot, respectively.
Well, that's a lie. I'm 6 foot. Or
Just
at least I
giving an
used to be.
example. So I could say Paul and Sue are 180 centimeters and 160
It's
centimeters.
183 centimeters, Sue.
183 centimeters and 150 something
or
centimeters,
if
respectively.
if we talk about nationality, Sue and Paul are Korean and British, respectively.
자, 이런 것처럼요. 앞에 누구는 뭐다라고 할 때 그게 순서대로 각각 해당되는 그 순서대로 이해하시라는 뜻이에요. 그러니까 수와 폴은 한국 사람과 영국 사람이다. 라는 것은 수가 한국, 영국 사람, 폴도 한국, 영국 사람이 아니라 수 앞에 있었던 수는 한국 사람, 뒤에 있었던 폴은 영국 사람이라는 의미가 되겠죠. 여기 또 여러 명 더 있으면은 Sue, Paul, and
Ray?
Ray are Korean, British, and Canadian.
Exactly.
Respectively. 이걸
Yes.
붙여야 됩니다. Respectively를 붙였을 때는 각각의 순서에 맞게 이렇게 1대1로 대응을 하라는 뜻이에요. 그래서 그렇게 해석을 하시면 되겠고, 여기서 말하는 거는 뭐냐면 배추와 무가 각각 40%와 25% 올랐다. 이런 걸 말하고 있습니다. 자, 다시 한번 제가 읽어볼까요? The prices of Napa cabbage and radish, which are key ingredients in kimchi, have risen by 40% and 25% respectively, compared to the same period last year. Let's move on to the next headline.
The OECD has estimated Korea's potential growth rate to be 2% for the second consecutive year, according to government data, marking a gradual decline from 2.4% 4 years ago.
정부 자료에 따르면 경제협력개발기구 OECD가 한국의 올해 잠재 성장률을 2년 연속 2%로 추정해 4년 전 2.4%에서 조금씩 하락하고 있는 것으로 나타났습니다. Tell us about the forecasts.
Yes, so the finance ministry looking at it, we're seeing this reduction, this gradual decline. 2020, 2021, we were at 2.4%. 2022, we're at 2.3%. And now we're at 2.0%. They're saying it's to do with the productive age population declining. We've got less people of working age because we don't have as many children, so less people are becoming young adults, and we have a super aging society where more and more people are becoming retired, meaning they're perhaps unable or unwilling to work. So therefore we have this reduction of our potential growth rate.
네. 여기서 말하는 potential growth rate가 잠재 성장률이 되겠습니다. 자, 그러면은 첫 번째 표현을 좀 볼 텐데요. To estimate.
Yes, you tried to estimate my height several times. You didn't get it right.
At first I thought you were 7 feet, which is what?
It's over 2 meters, isn't it?
Yes, you look very, very tall to me.
Okay. Yeah. So when we estimate something, we're roughly judging it or roughly calculating it. So for example, Sue sort of guessed that I was 180 centimeters. I'm 183 last time I checked. So she was 3 centimeters off, but it was a pretty good estimate. So we use this when we don't have the precise figure, we don't know the precise whatever it is, but we're taking a rough guess or a rough look at something.
Now, I haven't told you my exact height. Can you estimate how tall I am?
Can you stand up?
No. Really?
Yes. Yeah, no, I have to estimate.
Okay.
Okay. You are 157 centimeters.
Very close.
Yeah.
I'll keep it at that.
Okay.
Very, very close. 자, 이렇게.
I'm now very curious. How tall is Sue?
I'm very short. I'm not proud of it, but maybe I should be proud of my short height.
Your height has nothing to do with your ability. We're all born to be a certain height.
지금 선생님이 제 키를 추정해봤거든요. 추측해봤어요. Paul tried to estimate my height. And you're about 2 centimeters off, I have to say.
That's pretty good.
I won't tell you if I'm taller or shorter.
Let's pretend you're taller.
자, 그 다음에 gradual is the next word.
A gradual something is something that's happening slowly. It's not happening all at once. There's not a spike or a surge or a plunge or a dive. It's happening relatively slowly.
네. 서서히 일어나는 것을 gradual이라고 합니다. gradual decline 그러면은 서서히 줄어들고 있다는 거고 gradual increase는 서서히 늘어나는 거죠. gradually이라고 하면은 부사라서 서서히 뭐뭐 하다라고 할 때 I gradually grew to be the height that I am today.
Yeah, and I'm gradually growing grey. I've got little white hairs in my beard, a few white hairs on top. I'll probably be grey someday, but not quite yet.
Exactly. Gradually growing grey.
Yes.
Going grey? What did you say?
Going grey.
Going grey. 그러네요. I'm gradually going grey. 다 G로 시작하니까 이게 약간 시적으로 느껴져요. grey는 우리는 백발이라고 하지만 서양에서는 회색 머리라고 하거든요. 그러니까
You can say you have white hair or grey hair. Both are used.
그래요. 그렇지만 보통은 이제 나 머리가 점점 이제 흰 머리가 많이 나. 이거 영어식으로는 I'm going grey. I have a lot of grey hairs. 라고 보통 하는 것 같아요.
And if it's half and half, well then you're salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper. All right. It's time for us to move on. Here's the headline again. The OECD has estimated Korea's potential growth rate to be 2% for the second consecutive year, according to government data, marking a gradual decline from 2.4% 4 years ago.
The Euclid Space Telescope has unveiled a portion of the cosmic atlas it is building, which features tens of millions of stars within the Milky Way and approximately 14 million distant galaxies beyond our own.
우주망원경 유클리드가 현재 만들고 있는 우주 지도의 일부를 공개했습니다. 여기에는 은하수 안의 별 수천만 개와 우리 은하계 너머에 있는 약 1,400만 개의 먼 은하 이미지가 담겼습니다. Wow, this is an amazing map.
It really is, and it's still underway. What we have now, this mosaic of all these different stars, is what was collected between March 25th and April 8th this year. 260 different observations by Euclid. I mean, when we're looking at the size of it, if you think of the full moon appearing in the sky over Earth, the region that they've just released is 500 times that. So it's a huge amount. And that's just 1% of the total it's going to be. So it's gonna happen over the next 6 years. And it's going to be the largest 3D map of the cosmos that has ever been created. And hopefully it'll be the key to unlocking some of the secrets of the universe, like when it comes to, dark matter and dark energy, which sounds like something from a superhero movie.
Well, we've just been talking about this atlas, a cosmic atlas.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, we have a map. A map is the image of an area that shows you the location of everything. Yeah. An atlas is a book of maps. So, for example, when I was a kid, I had a world atlas.
Me too.
And, you would turn to whatever page it might be. Page 33 would be South Korea. Page 45 would be the United States of America. And you could see each individual map.
Yes.
So what they're doing here is creating a series of maps of as much of the universe as they can.
Exactly. Atlas, A-T-L-A-S. 이거는 지도책이란 뜻입니다. 그래서 World Atlas는 예전에는 이런 거를 이제 집에 두기도 하고 세계 그 지도인데요. 각 페이지를 넘기면은 아시아 지도, 유럽 지도, 미국 지도 볼 수 있는 그런 책이었어요. 지도책. 요즘에는 그냥 스마트폰이나 인터넷으로 볼 수 있으니까 아마 지도책 가지고 있는 사람 많지 않을 거예요.
Yeah, we just talk about maps. But do you know where Atlas comes from?
No.
Greek mythology. The god who carried the world on his shoulders. And so therefore that's why we use the word atlas, because it contains the whole world.
그렇군요. 그리고 cosmic라는 거는 우주라는 형용사이기 때문에 우주 지도가 되겠습니다. 쉽게 말하면은요, cosmic atlas. 자, 그 다음에는 이제 distant.
Far away.
Very
far away. If something is distant, Sue and I are not distant, we're close.
Yeah.
We're sitting practically next to each other. I'm distant from my family. They're on the other side of the world.
Yes.
I'm even more distant from the moon. That's out in space, and I'm even more distant from another galaxy. Very, very, very far away.
네. distant라는 거는 멀다라는 의미고요. 동사로도 쓸 수 있지만 또 형용사로도 먼이라는 뜻으로 쓸 수 있고 그다음에 우리가 distant relatives라는 뜻으로 그 표현을 쓰는데 먼 친척이란 뜻이에요. 네, far relatives 아니고 distant relatives, 먼 친척.
And you know what's the saddest day?
What?
When Sue is being really distant from me. When she's acting like I'm not there. When she's refusing to talk to me. Sue, why are you being so distant?
Right. And that's not a nice feeling, is it?
No.
자, being distant이라는 거는 굉장히 차갑게 대하는 거예요. 굉장히 좀 거리를 두는 거죠. 네. 좋아하는 사람이 이렇게 거리를 두면 마음이 아프죠. It's very
네,
sad when
오늘은 마음이 되게 아파요.
when someone you like is very distant.
수쌤 왜 이렇게 하는 거예요?
Let's move on. Here's the headline again. The Euclid Space Telescope has unveiled a portion of the cosmic atlas it is building, which features tens of millions of stars within the Milky Way and approximately 14 million distant galaxies beyond our own. Let's move on to the next headline.
A team of researchers has shown that one species of phytoplankton travel from deep in the sea toward the surface by swelling to 6 times its original size.
한 식물성 플랑크톤이 원래 크기의 6배로 몸을 부풀리는 방법으로 심해에서 수면으로 이동한다는 사실이 연구 결과 밝혀졌습니다. This is interesting.
Yes, well, these phytoplankton are very interesting as well. They're the kind of plankton that glow when they're underwater.
Wow.
And they come up to the surface because they need sunlight to photosynthesize,
Right.
hence being phytoplankton. And it can take days for it to happen. However, there are some that can do it on a daily basis. What's interesting is that they're denser than seawater, this particular species, so they should sink. However, they swell up. and they swell up
Interesting.
and they swell up so that they can float to the surface and get more light. It's not just about rising, though. It's actually better for predators, or rather worse for predators and better for them, because if you see a tiny plankton, you go, delicious. But if the plankton happens to be the size of you, you'd probably say,
looks
oh, no,
scary.
not going to eat that.
Exactly. photosynthesizing이라는 거는요, 광합성을 한다는 뜻이에요. 명사 형태로는 photosynthesis.
네.
이 스펠링이 굉장히 어려운데 앞에 photo는 우리가 잘 알고 있는 사진이랑 같은 스펠링이고요. photo. 그다음에 synthesis는 synthesis. 이 명사고요. 동사일 때는 뒤에 ze로 바꾸시면 됩니다. Alright, so going towards the surface.
Yeah, I mean, you're heading towards it. You're getting closer. You're getting nearer. And the surface is the top of the water.
맞아요. 그 표면에 가까이 간다. 여기서는 수면을 향해서 간다가 되겠고요. Swelling.
If something swells, it gets bigger.
Does.
And bigger.
Yep.
And maybe even bigger. It can be because you're blowing air into it. For example, the balloon swells when you blow into it. Or it could be after you hit your thumb or stub your toe.
Oh, no.
And then your toe or thumb swells.
Yeah, you end up with a swollen thumb or
Exactly.
a swollen toe.
Or if you eat too much, you end up with a swollen belly.
부풀다, 뿔다 이런 뜻이에요. 그래가지고 다쳤을 때 지금 뭐 엄지손가락이나 엄지 발가락 얘기를 하셨는데 거기에 이제 쿵 하고 다치면은 붓잖아요. 그래서 that is a swollen toe, your toe swells 이렇게 표현을 하고요. 그냥 우리가 그냥 casually 슬랭으로는 this is swell 그러면은 그땐 되게 좋다는 뜻이죠.
Yeah, I don't know how often people use it
Very
nowadays.
old.
It's a bit
맞아요.
old.
좀
Yeah.
오래된 표현이긴 한데 참고로 알아두시면 됩니다. 자, 다시 한번 읽어볼게요. A team of researchers has shown that one species of phytoplankton travel from deep in the sea toward the surface by swelling to 6 times its original size. Now here's our final headline.
Young couples in China are breaking away from the custom of lavish wedding ceremonies in favor of affordable celebrations held at fast food and hot pot restaurants.
중국의 젊은 커플들이 호화로운 결혼식 관습 대신 패스트푸드 매장이나 허거 식당 등에서 저렴한 비용으로 식을 올리는 경우가 많은 것으로 전해졌습니다. A new trend
It
in
is,
China.
because the old trend was quite expensive.
Yes.
The traditional Chinese weddings are very luxurious and they've got lots of different rituals. You've got to give toasts after toasts after toasts. You're going to be throwing money into your wedding. And so younger couples are thinking, well, we could have that money for ourselves, so why not book a fast food restaurant or a hot pot restaurant? And so, for example, there was one wedding at a fast food chain in Foshan, in Guangdong province. It was like 155,000 won, 800 yuan in total for the meals. So we're talking about a much cheaper wedding than going to some luxury hotel and paying a lot more.
It sounds very affordable. So you're breaking away from tradition.
Yes, if we break away from something or somebody, we're moving away from them or we're doing things differently. So in this case, we break away from a tradition means we stop doing the tradition or we do it in a different way.
Exactly. And I think this is the form that's usually used, break away from tradition.
Exactly, yes.
전통으로부터 벗어나다. 그러니까 전통적인 방식을 고수하지 않고 다른 방식으로 무언가를 한다라는 뜻이 되겠고요. Breaking up from somebody 하면은
Well,
이제
breaking up with somebody.
Oh, sorry. Breaking up with somebody. 맞아요. 네, 그렇게 표현을 하면은 누군가와 헤어지다. 이때는 이제 연인들 간의 표현이니까 이건 좀 다른 표현이에요.
Yeah, and for example, during the pandemic for online conferences or even for schools, they would have breakaway rooms. You'd have the main online room where everyone was chatting and then one team would go into another room online to talk about one thing and then come back. That would be a breakaway room.
breakaway room. 그때는 이제 줌으로 회의를 하다가 너무 많은 사람이 같이 모여 있으니까 이제 각각 조별로 나눠서 방을 하나 만들겠습니다. We're gonna make a breakaway room. 그래서 여기서 떨어져 나온 방이다. 이런 의미로 쓸 수 있겠네요.
For example, I can break away from this explanation to say, I love donuts.
Yes.
And now back to the explanation.
본론에서 좀 벗어나서 갑자기 이제 다른 얘기를 좀 하셨군요. 자, 그다음에 요즘에 결혼식은 lavish 하지 않습니다.
네.
What's lavish?
Lavish. It's an L, L-A-V-I-S-H, means it's very luxurious, it's very grandiose, it feels like a lot of money has been spent, and it looks fabulous.
그렇죠. 굉장히 호화롭다. lavish. 근데 그렇지 않다는 겁니다. Breaking away from tradition. 요즘의 결혼식은 중국에서 they are smaller, more affordable, not lavish. 다시 읽어볼게요. Young couples in China are breaking away from the custom of lavish wedding ceremonies in favor of affordable celebrations held at fast food and hot pot restaurants. Well, that's it for the headlines.
Over 18 million international passengers have traveled through Incheon International Airport in the third quarter of this year, marking the highest quarterly figure since the airport began operations in 2001.
국제선 기준 올 3분기 인천공항 이용객 수가 1,800만 명을 넘어서면서 2001년 개항 이후 역대 최다 분기 실적을 달성했습니다. Well, I guess a lot of these people were probably hugging and saying goodbye.
Not at the drop-off zone.
Not at the drop-off zone.
'Cause,
Okay,
you know,
good.
we're very rushed people.
All right.
There will be people honking behind you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but it sounds like a lot of people were traveling overseas or using the airport in the third quarter of this year. As we mentioned, it was the highest quarterly figure since the airport began operations in 2001. I didn't realize it's been so long since the airport began operations, but it's been over 20 years.
Yeah.
So they say it was a total of 18,156,842 people who traveled overseas using Incheon International Airport from the months of July through September, and this surpassed the previous record of 17.92 million, which was set in the third quarter of 2019. I guess that's when everyone was like, oh, you know, COVID's kind of dying down. We're going to start traveling again. So a lot of people started traveling after or before COVID,
Before
excuse
COVID,
me.
yeah.
Before
Yeah.
COVID. And so compared with the third quarter of even last year, it's a high jump. It marked a 17.8% increase. And they said that the most popular routes were to Southeast Asia, with slightly over 5.02 million passengers traveling to Southeast Asia. And this was followed by Japan, which is very close, with 4.39 million, China with 2.9 million, and the Americas with 1.79 million. And they say that the increase has been caused by travelers using, you know, their summer vacation season, as well as the Chuseok holidays, as well as a record number of passengers using routes to Japan and the Americas, along with the recovery in demand for flights between Incheon and China.
종전에 가장 이제 사람들이 많이 기록됐던 분기는요, 인천국제공항에서 그게 바로 이제 코로나 직전인 2019년 3분기였다고 합니다. 그때는 1,800만 명이 조금 안 되는 숫자였는데요. 이번에 2024년 3분기는 1,800만 명이 넘어섰습니다. 그래서 분기 실적 중에서는 최다라고 해요. 이런 분기, 우리가 사실 이제 분기라고 하지만 구체적으로 말하면은 4분기,
Yeah.
1사분기, 2사분기, 3사분기, 4사분기 이런 4분기를 말하고 있는데 영어로는 quarter라고 하죠. The
Yep.
first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter.
Right.
그리고 그런 분기별의 수치는 뭐라고 하죠?
Quarterly figure. So as you mentioned, when you divide something into quarters, that's when you divide a whole into fours. So dividing the whole year into fours would be every 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this news article, they're talking about the fourth quarter, which is from September, or the third quarter,
yes.
excuse me, from July through September. And quarterly figure, of course, we use this a lot when we're talking about numbers like financial statements,
Yeah.
payments. So it's a number or a statistic that is released every 3 months.
그래요. 4분기 얘기할 때는 쿼터라는 단어를 넣어서 쿼터가 원래 4분의 1이라는 뜻이 있잖아요. 그래서 지금 이제 3분기, 3, 4분기를 얘기하고 있기 때문에 third quarter가 되겠고요. 그 분기의 수치는 quarterly figure입니다. 그렇다면 우리가 이제 1년을 그 전반과 후반 뭐 이런 식으로 2분기로
Yeah,
나눴을
yeah,
때, 네,
yeah.
그럴 때는 이제 first half,
Right.
second half라고 이제 2분의 1에 해당되는 요 숫자를 쓰게 되고요.
Right.
그때는 뭐, I wouldn't say halfly figure.
Yeah.
In that case, I would just say the figure for the first half or the figure for the
figure
second
for
half.
The first half, yeah. So when you look at news articles, you might see like 1H or 1Q,
Yes.
and that usually refers to the first half or the first quarter.
맞습니다. 이 4분의 1이라는 숫자가 시간에도 많이 쓰여요. 그래서 만약에 8시 15분이다. 그러면 it's a quarter past 8.
Yep.
이렇게 그러면은 60분을 4분의 1로 나눈 거니까 쿼터가 시간에서는 무조건 15분이라는 뜻이 있습니다.
Yeah, and Americans are very familiar with using the word quarter because even when you are using money,
Yes.
the quarter, it's a very well, nowadays we use the credit card a lot, but when we used to use a lot of cash, quarters were the most, they were used very frequently.
It's 25 cents?
25 cents. So you would divide the dollar into fours, and that would be your quarter.
그러게요. 돈에도 쓰이고 시간에도 쓰이고 이렇게 분기에도 쓰이고 4분의 1이라는 숫자가 참 여기저기 많이 일상생활 속에서 쓰입니다. 자, 그다음에는 무언가 운영을 시작하다라고 할 때 begin operations.
Yeah. So we mentioned that Incheon International Airport began operations in 2001, and that means that's when it opened to the public or it opened for use.
Yes, begin operations, 운영을 시작하다. 자, 그러면 다시 읽어보겠습니다. Over 18 million international passengers traveled through Incheon International Airport in the third quarter of this year, marking the highest quarterly figure since the airport began operations in 2001. Now let's move on to the next headline.
Moldovan citizens have backed the country's proposed changes to its constitution and commitment to joining the EU by the thinnest of margins in a referendum.
동유럽 국가 몰도바에서 유럽연합 가입 및 이를 위한 헌법 개정 여부를 묻는 찬반 국민투표를 실시한 결과 찬성표가 과반을 겨우 넘긴 것으로 나타났습니다. Tell us more.
Yeah, so they said that about 99.6% of votes have been counted as of Monday afternoon local time, and the official data put the percentage of yes votes at 50.46 and the percentage of no votes at 49.54. So it's a very, very small margin.
Wow.
And apparently this came as a shock to many because the referendum had been widely expected to comfortably pass in this country of 2.6 million, which borders Romania and Ukraine. So a EU spokesperson said that the vote had taken place under unprecedented interference and intimidation by Russia and its proxies. And the vote was also combined with presidential elections in which Maia Sandu, the incumbent pro-EU president, failed to win re-election outright, and it faces a second round next month. Sandu topped the election first round with 41% of the vote versus her closest opponents, 26%. But Sandu will now face a difficult second round coming up on November 3rd.
자, 이게 몰도바의 국민투표 결과입니다. 영어로는 referendum results라고 얘기할 수 있겠고요. Moldova is a former Soviet country, and as you said, it's next to Ukraine.
Yep.
It's also next to Romania. And the people of the country are saying they do want to join the EU.
Yep.
But only by a little bit.
By a very, very small margin, yeah.
이 투표 결과가요. EU 조인하고 싶다가 50.46%, 조인하기 싫다가 49.54%. 굉장히 근소한 차이로 찬성표가 일단 더 많기는 했습니다. 자, 그러면은 여기서 이제 몇 가지 표현을 좀 볼 텐데요. Commitment to doing something.
Yeah, so commitment to doing something means it's like a promise or a very firm decision to do something. So when you tell someone, I'm committed to this or I will commit to this, it means I'm promising you I will get this done.
약속이라는 의미가 있습니다. Commitment. 자, 그 다음에는 the thinnest of margins.
So this is another interesting way to say that the margin was not very big or
Yeah.
the margin was very small. So margin is talking about the difference between two amounts. So in this case, the difference between the two percentages of votes, the yes votes and the no votes. So we use it a lot when we're talking about votes or maybe even points between the winner or the loser in an election.
Yep.
So if it's the thinnest of margins, it means it's very thin. There's no big difference between the votes. So other expressions that you can use are there was a small margin, there was a narrow margin, and you
slim
could,
margin?
a slim margin, or another way you could say is that so if someone won the election by a very narrow margin or the thinnest of margins, you could say they won by a hair.
By a hair.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've also read somewhere that the margin was razor thin. So,
Yeah.
you know, anything to do with something that's really small
Yeah.
and thin or narrow. That's what you can use here. 자, 일단은요. 여기서 찬성표가 반대표보다 아주 조금 많았죠. 그래서 그 차이, margin이 thin했다. thin은 우리가 종이 같은 거 얇다라고 할 때 많이 쓰는 표현이기도 하지만 여기서는 근소한 차이, 근소하다라는 의미로 여기서 쓰고 있고요. 지금 캐런 선생님이 설명해 주신 것처럼 there was a narrow margin, a small margin, a thin margin, slim margin 다 가능합니다. 여러 가지 이제 작다, 뭐 날씬하다, 얇다 이런 뜻의 단어들을 다 갖다 붙일 수가 있고 아니면 they won by a hair라는 표현도 있는데요. 만약에 어떤 투표에서 우승을 했다. 이기긴 이겼는데 아주 근소한 차이로 이겼다라고 하면 they won by a hair. 머리카락 하나. 이렇게 hair라고 표현을 할 수도 있겠죠. 자, 실제로 미국의 지금 여러 가지 여론조사들 결과를 보면은요.
Yeah.
The popularity votes right now in America show that there's just a very slim margin of difference between the former President Trump and VP Harris.
Yeah.
So we don't know who's going to win.
Right.
Because, you know, all of the different polls show that there's a very, very slim margin.
Right. The
Who
thinnest
knows?
of margins.
The thinnest of margins.
They're neck and neck.
Exactly. 자, 다시 한번 읽어보겠습니다. Moldovan citizens have backed the country's proposed changes to its constitution and commitment to joining the EU by the thinnest of margins in a referendum.
Cold spells have swept through parts of China, resulting in unexpected early snowfall across several northern regions, including Taiwan City, which recorded its earliest snowfall in over 70 years.
중국 일부 지역을 덮친 한파로 북부 여러 지역에 때이른 눈이 내린 가운데 이중 산시성의 타이 위안시에 내린 눈은 73년 만에 가장 이른 강설로 기록됐습니다. It's snowing in China.
Yeah. So the snow that fell in Shanxi province, they say that it was because of the falling temperatures with the mix of rain that hit Taiwan City. And as you mentioned, or as we mentioned, it's the first snow or the earliest snowfall in over 70 years. So it was recorded, or the earliest first snowfall of a year that was recorded since 1951 for the region. So we're seeing, unprecedented, I guess, weather conditions, extreme weather conditions in the region. So because of this cold spell, Gansu province experienced continuous snowfall from Saturday night. So heavy snow accumulation and ice on the road disrupted a lot of traffic. They did say that most of the snow melted before Monday morning, but some road sections still had black ice. And the wintry weather also affected expressways running through the city in Taiwan City, prompting the deployment of police officers to ensure that everyone was safe and there was a smooth flow of traffic.
자, 그래요. There was this cold spell that was sweeping through China. It still is, actually.
Yeah.
So what is a cold spell?
A cold spell is like a period of cold weather. So when usually we use this when it's not expected or
Yeah.
when it comes unseasonally.
It's quite a short period too, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a short period of cold weather.
짧은 기간 동안의 추위를 cold spell이라고 해요. 비슷한 의미로 dry spell. 이제 한동안 비가 안 오는 거죠. 그 다음에 wet spell. 그럼 비가 너무 갑자기 이제 짧은 기간 안에 예상치 못했을 때 갑자기 비가 요즘에 많이 오네. We're experiencing a wet spell. 이럴 수도 있고 hot spell은 제가 많이 못 들어봐서 찾아봤더니 있기는 있어요. 그 표현이. 근데 갑자기 짧은 기간 동안 더워졌네 이런 말을 우리가 잘 안 해서 그런지 한번 들어보진 못했거든요. 근데 뭐 사전에 보니까 있긴 있더라고요. 그래서 그 spell이라는 게 그런 이제 한동안에 긴 기간은 아니지만 갑자기 예기치 않은 상황 속에서 갑자기 여기 좀 추워졌어. 지금 중국이 그런 거죠. 갑자기 추워졌어. 그래가지고 이제 예기치 못한 눈이 내린 겁니다. 예기치 못하다. 요거는 영어로 unexpected.
Unexpected, right. So when something is not expected or when something is regarded as likely to happen, we can also use the expression unexpected.
네. 자, 그럼 다시 한번 제가 읽어보겠습니다. Cold spells have swept through parts of China, resulting in unexpected early snowfall across several northern regions, including Taiyuan City, which recorded its earliest snowfall in over 70 years. Let's move on to the next headline.
India's Yamuna River in Delhi has been covered with a thick layer of toxic white froth, posing health hazards for residents, especially as the festive season approaches.
인도 델리에 있는 야무나 강이 두꺼운 흰색 유독성 거품으로 뒤덮여 특히 축제 시즌을 앞두고 주민들 건강에 대한 우려가 커지고 있습니다. You know, when I saw the picture of this, I thought it was styrofoam. 저는 이 스티로폼을 강 위에다가 얹어놨나 싶을 정도로 굉장히 두꺼운 흰색 거품이 또 양도 많아요.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So the Yamuna River is the second largest tributary river of the Ganges, and it's especially, I think, concerning for locals because a very important festival is coming up. It's going to be celebrated on November 5th this year, and it usually involves, devotees taking a dip into this river.
Oh, no.
But with the state of the river being extremely polluted, it sounds like festivities may be hampered. So experts are saying that this foam, it contains high levels of ammonia and phosphates, and it poses serious health risks, including respiratory and skin problems. So I wouldn't even go near, much less dip myself into that river. So they have been trying to tackle this issue by sprinkling defoamers, but I don't know if that would really get to the root of the problem. And experts, they've urged the government to try to address this issue before this festival takes place because there are people who will not listen. And probably, if this is important to them, they might go ahead and, go into the river despite all these risks.
I mean, November 5th is a significant date in other countries too,
Yep.
but we only have about 2 weeks left.
Yep.
I hope they're able to clean up the river before then.
Yeah.
조금 전에 유독성 foam이라고 하면서 거기에는 암모니아랑 인산염, 포스페이트가 들어있다고 했습니다.
Yep.
그래서 당연히 만지면 안 되고요. 원래는 근데 이 축제 기간 동안에 물속에 들어가서 입수를 하고 나오는 전통이 있답니다. 그래서 11월 5일이래요.
Yep.
인도에 있는 이제 축제가. 그때 전에 싹 좀 치워야 될 텐데 걱정입니다. 양도 많고 거품이 굉장히 두꺼워요. 이 거품을 여기서 영어로 froth라고 했습니다.
Yeah, froth. So, if you get coffee, if you get like a latte, they might ask you, with froth. But it's the top white mass of small bubbles in liquid that's caused by, it could be caused by a number of different factors, but it could be caused by agitation or fermentation. So it's like foam.
Exactly. I love a little latte art on my cafe lattes.
Yep.
우리 카페 라떼 주문했을 때 위에 우유 거품 올라가잖아요. 이런 거품을 froth라고 합니다. 그래서 버블이랑 좀 구별을 해볼게요. 버블도 사전적인 의미는 거품이에요.
Yep.
근데 버블은 어떤 거냐면 비눗방울 같은 거품을 버블이라고 해요.
Yeah.
그래서 우리 풍선껌도 버블감이라고 하죠. 그런 이제 비누 거품 같은 거 말고 라떼 위에 올라가는 우유 거품 아니면 맥주 이제 쭉 부으면은 맥주 위에
The
올라가는
white, yeah.
네, 거품. 그리고 또 조금 안 좋은 예지만 입에 거품을 물다. frothing at the mouth. 너무 화가 났어요. 아니면은 이제
be like an
개가
animal,
광견병 걸렸을
Yes.
때, 네, 그럴 때 이제 the dog is frothing at his mouth
Yeah.
이렇게 말할 수 있거든요. 그런 거품을 froth, F-R-O-T-H라고 합니다.
Yeah. So in my head, the difference between bubbles and froth is bubbles are clear.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the individual
Of
bubbles.
course, yeah.
But with froth, it's more white and it's more of a mass of bubbles.
Exactly. 자, what does it mean when you say something poses health hazards?
So pose here, it means to present or constitute like a problem or a danger or difficulty. And health hazards can be something that's very detrimental to your health. It could be a chemical or physical or biological factors in our environment that could have negative impacts on our health.
Pose health risks, pose health hazards 이렇게 건강의 위험을 초래하다라고 할 때 pose라는 동사를 써요. 그래서 건강을 위협한다라고도 볼 수 있습니다. 다시 읽어볼게요. India's Yamuna River in Delhi has been covered with a thick layer of toxic white froth, posing health hazards for residents, especially as the festive season approaches. Now on to our final headline.
Researchers in the U.S. have announced that they have found a trove of lithium, a critical raw material for electric vehicle batteries, in an underground brine reservoir in the state of Arkansas.
미국 연구팀이 아켄소주의 지하 소금물 저수지에서 전기 자동차용 배터리의 핵심 원료인 리튬을 대량 발견했다고 발표했습니다. 와우, 영어로는 lithium이라고 하죠.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder, if we'll be seeing more EVs
Yeah,
in the
maybe.
future. But I guess this is very exciting news, and it makes me think again how big America really is, and how the country really does have a lot of natural resources. But they were able to discover this large, this trove of lithium with the help of water testing and machine learning. And the researchers, they were able to determine that there might be 5 million to 19 million tons of lithium. And this amount is more than enough to meet all of the world's demand for lithium.
Wow.
And this geological area, it doesn't just involve the state of Arkansas, but nearby states as well. It's a very large area known as the Smackover Formation. So they don't know whether they'll be able to harvest all of this because this lithium harvesting it takes hold in the region will depend on the ability of interested companies, of course, to scale up new methods of extracting this very valuable battery ingredient from the salty water that we mentioned. Until now, they said that most of the world's lithium was produced in Australia and South America. But now that they've found this,
Yeah.
who knows, maybe America will become the #1 exporter of lithium.
It's like they struck gold.
Yeah, yeah.
This really is a treasure trove in many
is.
ways. Let's look at the word trove.
Right, so a trove is like a store of valuable or delightful things, or you can also use it to refer to a large amount of something good, useful, or valuable.
T-R-O-V-E, trove는 매장물이란 뜻인데요. 그러니까 매장된 무언가라는 뜻이에요. 그러니까 보통은 우리가 보물 얘기할 때 treasure trove라고 하거든요. 그 이미지가 trove라는 단어만 들어도 가장 먼저 떠오르게 됩니다. 원어민들은. 그래서 여기서도 a trove of lithium이라고 했어요. 그래서 매장된 리튬을 대량 발견한 것인데 이게 마치 보물을 발견한 것 같은
Yeah.
느낌인 거예요.
Yeah.
Now, what's a brine reservoir?
A brine reservoir is, when we're talking about brine, it's salt water,
Yeah.
particularly with a highly concentrated water solution of common salt or sodium chloride. And a reservoir is a large natural or artificial lake that is used as a source of water supply.
Yeah. Normally, you can preserve meat or fish or even olives
Yeah.
in brine.
Yeah.
그 소금물이라는 뜻이 있어요. brine이라는 게. 근데 보통 우리가 그 여러 가지 뭐 고기라든지 아니면은 뭐 꽁치 같은 거 있잖아요. 캔에
Yeah.
들어있는 거. 그것도 이제 소금물에 담겨져 있죠. 그거를 영어로는 brine이라고 하거든요. 올리브도 마찬가지고. 그런 게 이제 brine인데 여기서는 소금물 저수지 brine reservoir, B-R-I-N-E. Here's the headline again. Researchers in the US have announced that they've found a trove of lithium, a critical raw material for electric vehicle batteries, in an underground brine reservoir in the state of Arkansas. All right, well, that's it for the headline.
The International Monetary Fund has maintained its growth outlook for South Korea for this year at 2.5%, leaving it unchanged from its earlier forecast in July.
국제통화기금 IMF가 올해 우리나라 경제 성장률을 지난 7월과 같은 2.5%로 유지했습니다. Tell us more.
Well, the figure is actually higher than the 2.4 growth projected by the Bank of Korea, but it's actually lower than the 2.6% forecast from the Korean government. It matches, which is 2.5%, it matches the projections from the OECD as well as the Korea Development Institute.
BOK, 한국은행이 지금 내다보고 있는 2.6% 경제 성장률에 비해서는 조금 낮은 2.5%를 IMF에서 지금 제시하고 있는데요. OECD에서는 다 마찬가지로 2.5% 경제 성장률을 내다보고 있습니다. 올해의 경제 성장률, the economic forecast for this year. Well, leaving something unchanged is our first expression.
Right, so that means not changing something, keeping something in place. So this could be prices, you decide not to change your prices. Forecasts in this case, which we're going to talk about next, some prediction. Now, the IMF, so they left their prediction for the Korean economy unchanged. They also left their estimate for the global economy unchanged as well, which is 3.2% for this year. They feel that it's still going to be that as they predicted in July.
세계 경제 성장률은 3.2%로 IMF가 내다보고 있고요. 지난 7월에도 똑같이 3.2%로 내다봤다고 합니다. 이렇게 변동이 없는 거를 unchanged라고 하고요. leave something은 놔두다 라는 뜻이에요. leave it, 놔둬. 그래서 leave something unchanged 그러면은 변동 없이 놔둔다라는 의미죠.
You might also hear keep something as it is.
There you go. Keep something as it is. 이것도 마찬가지로 그대로 놔둔다 이런 뜻입니다. 그래서 지난 7월 달에 경제 성장률 전망치와 이번에 경제 성장률 전망치가 똑같다. 변동 없다. 이런 의미가 되겠죠. And what about the noun forecast?
So forecast, outlook, prediction, estimate, these are all synonyms. Forecast often is used for weather, the weather forecast.
Yeah, that's right. 우리 일기예보를 영어로 weather forecast라고 하는데요. 그 외에 경제 이제 전망 어떤 것에 전망치 할 때는 다양한 단어가 쓰여요. forecast, outlook, prediction 다 마찬가지입니다.
I guess we should say that it's not just a guess, though. So guess is random, whereas a forecast or a prediction, an outlook, it's an educated guess. So they're using some information that they have to make a prediction about a future event or a situation or a future outcome.
Exactly. 우리 guess라는 거는 추측하는 거잖아요. 그래서 guess who came in the studio this morning? Ray! 막 이런 식으로 guess.
Did you ever play that board game when you were a kid?
Yeah,
Guess who?
I have it at home.
You do?
Right now, yes.
Oh, bring it one day. Let's have a game.
guess라는 거는 맞춰, 추측하다 이런 뜻이죠. 그래서 guess what, guess who, guess how 이런 식으로 그 W하고 H들을 붙이면 되는데 guess의 앞에다가요 educated를 붙이면은 이거는 그냥 랜덤으로 추측하는 게 아니라 연구를 토대로, 데이터를 토대로 하는 추측입니다. 그래서 지금 얘기하고 있는 forecast, outlook, prediction이랑 비슷한 의미가 돼요. educated guess라고 하면은. 그냥 guess는 아니죠. 그냥 랜덤하게. Oh, I guess the economy next year is gonna go up 10%.
Right, that would be a random guess.
Random number by
Right.
someone who has no background in this field. 그건 이제 그냥 정말 뭐 별로 믿을 만한 건 아니죠. guess 한다는 거는. All right, so let's read the headline again. I'm going to do this. The International Monetary Fund has maintained its growth outlook for South Korea for this year at 2.5%, leaving it unchanged from its earlier forecast in July. Now let's move on to the second headline.
The number of babies born in the country rose for the second consecutive month in August, year on year, amid lingering demographic challenges caused by the ultra-low birth rate and rapid aging.
초저출생 상황과 급속한 고령화로 인한 인구 감소 위기가 지속되는 와중 지난 8월 국내 출생아 수가 지난해 같은 달보다 늘어나면서 2달 연속 증가세를 보였습니다. Alright, so in August, we saw more babies than last August.
That's right. So a total of 20,098 babies were born in August 2024, and that's a 5.9% increase from 2023. Now, as the headline mentions, it's the second consecutive month that we've seen an increase. In July, it was actually a larger increase. It went up 7.9% year over year. And when we say year over year, we're comparing the same month of last year to this month.
맞아요. Year over year 아니면 year on year 이게 다 이제 작년 같은 기간 대비라는 뜻인데요. 지금 8월 달입니다. 그래서 올 8월이 작년 8월에 비해서 5.9%나 출생률이 늘었어요. 출생아 수가요. 출생아 수가 이번에는 2만 98명이었다고 합니다. 이번 8월이요. And it's always good news to hear that more children are being born because as we know, Korea is suffering from this, excuse me, ultra low birth rate, and we don't have enough newborns really.
No, not unless
compared to other countries.
So it's definitely Korea's the lowest, but
Yeah.
I guess other countries are more open to immigration. So the big thing and all the articles say this, it's below the rate unless you're going to go for immigration.
Got it.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
All right. Well, shall we look at the main expressions? The first one is lingering.
I think we did this last week, but lingering means when something remains or continues for a long time. It's lasting for a long time. Usually it's lasting longer than expected. So a lot of times we'll talk about people having lingering symptoms from some illness.
Yeah, exactly. 남아있다라는 뜻인데 이게 어떤 느낌에 남아있는 거냐면은요. 아팠어요. 한동안 좀 아팠는데 뭐 다쳤다든지. 그런데 지금은 어느 정도 낫지만 그래도 약간의 통증이 남아있다. 할 때 그거 남아있다. 아니면은 향수를 이제 뿌려가지고 방에 있었어요. 그 다음에 방에서 나갔는데 그 향이 남아있어요. 방에. 사람은 나갔는데. 그런 남아있다라는 의미입니다. 자, 여기서는 lingering demographic challenges라는 표현이 나오죠. 그래서 인구 통계적인 어려움이 여전히 한국에는 남아있다. 근데 그런 상황 속에서 이번 8월 달에 출생아 수가 작년 8월에 비해서 거의 6% 증가했으니까 희소식이죠. Now, when we add the word ultra to something, what about that?
It means extremely.
Yeah.
So you might talk about something being ultra expensive. Sometimes we'll describe architecture as ultra modern. I remember movies when I was a kid, especially in the 80s, there was a lot of ultra violent movies.
Okay.
And my mom, you can't watch that. It's ultra violent. You're not allowed to watch that one.
Too violent.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say is ultra expensive? I know something that comes to my mind immediately.
What's that?
Space travel.
Yes. Yeah.
Ultra expensive.
For sure.
Yeah.
Artwork, vehicles, housing, apartments,
yes.
right?
That's right. Yeah. Ultra.
Especially in certain areas, like in Gangnam, you would say that's an ultra expensive area of Seoul.
That's right. 자, ultra something이라고 하면은 극도로 뭐하다, 뭐뭐뭐라고 해석할 수도 있어요. 그러니까 굉장히 비싼, 굉장히 모던한, 또 ultra sensitive 그러면 굉장히 예민한 이런 의미가 되겠죠.
What did you call me?
이렇게 아주 극도로 예민한 사람한테 쓸 수 있을 텐데요. 여기서는 ultra low birth rate입니다. 출산율이 매우 낮아요. 우리나라 상황이죠. 다시 읽어보겠습니다. The number of babies born in the country rose for the second consecutive month in August, year on year, amid lingering demographic challenges caused by the ultra-low birth rate and rapid aging.
An E. coli outbreak linked to a popular hamburger from a fast food chain in the U.S. has left one person dead and at least 10 people hospitalized, according to local health authorities.
미국에서 한 패스트푸드 체인점의 인기 햄버거 품목과 관련된 대장균 집단 발병 사태로 지금까지 1명이 숨지고 최소 10명이 입원했다고 현지 보건당국이 밝혔습니다. And for the purpose of this story, because this is in the news and people have been hospitalized, in fact, one person has even lost their life from it, we will be mentioning the name of the place, but it is strictly for the purpose of this news. So tell us more, Ray.
Well, speaking of guilty pleasures, we're talking about McDonald's, and it's not yet known which ingredient in the hamburger is making people sick. And it's the quarter pounder that has been linked in this story. So they're not sure right now if it's the onions or the beef patty used in the quarter pounder that's making people sick.
Yep.
They've taken it off the menu in many of the affected states. Most of the issues have taken place in Colorado and Nebraska. Here's my other page. I had the wrong page here. And at least 49 people in 10 states have actually been sickened by this. 10 people have gone to hospital, and one child has actually developed a kidney disease from this. Now, E. coli, the symptoms of E. coli are stomach cramps and diarrhea, vomiting, but the majority of people recover without treatment within a week. However, some people can develop severe kidney problems, as unfortunately this one child has. The person who died was just described as an older adult in Colorado.
자, E. coli가 바로 대장균이 되겠고요. 이제 이 발병을 한 패스트푸드 체인점 조금 전에 말씀을 드렸죠. 미국의 경우입니다. 그리고 미국에 있는 이 맥도날드에 있는 메뉴판에서 특정한 버거만 그랬어요. 그래서 현재는 미국에서 그 버거가 메뉴판에서 현재는 빠졌다고 합니다. 지금 그걸 서빙을 안 하고 면밀히 조사 중이라고 해요. 정확히 어떤 것 때문에 이렇게 대장균 발생을 한 것인지, 이렇게 많은 사람들이 아픈 것인지 확인 중에 있다고 합니다. So once again, we want to say that this is happening in America only. It's not just across the world.
No, and it's only in that area, Colorado, Nebraska.
In certain states.
Yes, I
특정 주에서만, 그것도 미국 전역이 아니고요. 특정 주에서 지금 이렇게 발병이 많이 되고 있다고 합니다. 조금 전에 아까 콜로라도하고 네브라스카라고 하셨나요?
Yeah, McDonald's released a statement on Tuesday that said an initial investigation found, quote, a subset of illnesses were tied to the slivered onions from one supplier that serves 3 of its distribution centers. So it looks as though it could be the onions.
Okay. It could be linked to the onions, we might say.
Right. Linked to means connected or related. There's a relationship exists.
Be linked to A라고 하면 A와 관계됐다, 연관이 있다 이런 뜻이어가지고요. An E. coli outbreak linked to a popular hamburger라고 했습니다.
So we talked about carbs earlier. So too many carbs is linked to weight gain a lot of the time.
맞아요. 탄수화물 너무 많이 섭취하면은 체중이 늘죠. 그래서 그게 연관성이 있다. Too many carbs is linked to weight gain. 자, 그 다음에는 be hospitalized.
That means you're admitted to the hospital. So it's different from just visiting the doctor or visiting the hospital for a checkup or something. When you're hospitalized, we say admitted to hospital. It means you have to stay there for a few days. So obviously it's more serious.
맞아요. 자, be admitted to hospital 하면은 입원하게 되는 겁니다. And then you become an inpatient, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So when you're admitted to hospital, does that mean you're staying there for a certain period of time?
Right.
inpatient가 그래서 이제 입원 환자가 되겠고요. outpatient는 거기서 입원한 건 아니고 뭐라 그러죠? 그냥 진료만 받는 환자가 되겠습니다. 자, 그러면 다시 한번 제가 읽어볼게요. An E. coli outbreak linked to a popular hamburger from a fast food chain in the US has left 1 person dead and at least 10 people hospitalized, according to local health authorities. Let's move on to the next headline.
A hoard of 1,000-year-old coins discovered by an amateur detectorist has sold for 4.3 million pounds, or about 7.7 billion won, and is set to be displayed at the British Museum.
네, 영국의 한 아마추어 보물 사냥꾼이 발견한 약 1000년 전 동전 더미가 430만 파운드, 우리 돈으로 약 77억 원에 팔렸으며 곧 대형 박물관에 전시될 예정인 것으로 알려졌습니다. But it took a really long time for this person to cash in their discovery,
And
right?
it's not just one person, it's a group of 7 actually.
is it? Okay, tell us more.
Well, this hoard was over 2,500 silver pennies from the time of the Norman conquest, and it's been bought for, as it mentions in the headline, 4.3 million pounds, and that is the highest value treasure ever found in the UK. Wow. 7 metal detectorists who found these coins back in 2019. The Treasure Act says the people who find it need to split the money with the landowner. So the landowner will get half the money, and then 2.15 million pounds will be split among 7 people.
그렇군요. 자, 일단은 이 발견된 거는 5년 전이에요. 그래서 이렇게 좀 오래 기다렸습니다. 7명의 디텍터리스트라고 했는데요. 아마추어 보물 사냥꾼이에요. 그래서 이 7명의 보물 사냥꾼이 5년 전에 발견한 이 오래된 동전들, 그 가치가 이번에 77억 원에 팔렸으니까 뭐 상당하다고 볼 수 있겠고, 그 77억 원을 고스란히 7명이 나눠 갖는 건 아니고요. 땅 주인 있죠. 어딘가에서 발견했을 테니까 땅 주인이 50%, 그 다음에 나머지 50%는 7명이 나눠 갖는다고 합니다. 그리고 대형 박물관, 영어로는 British Museum이라고 해요. 의외로 영어 이름이 굉장히 심플하죠. 대형 박물관, 네, British Museum.
Have you ever been there?
I have many times.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's free. You can just
free.
go in.
Yeah, I was going to say, because they have a lot of free exhibitions there.
No, it's good. It's really good. And so it'll be on display in the British Museum. Then it's actually going to be displayed, or not like all these coins, in museums across the UK. And then it's going to have a permanent home at the Museum of Somerset in Taunton, which I believe is in the southwest.
I think so, yes. All right, what's a hoard of something?
A large collection of something, and the nuance for hoard is that it's usually kept in a secret place. Someone's been hiding them, basically. And you can also, if you call someone a hoarder, that means they keep everything. They never throw things out. So they're usually, their house is full of random items or what people might say is junk.
hoard의 스펠링은 H-O-A-R-D-이고요. 저작물이라는 뜻이 있습니다. 왜 그런 사람들 있잖아요. 집에 물건을 버리지 못하고 다 항상 이제 저장해놓고 쌓아놓고 이러는 경우들 있죠. 그런 사람은 hoarder라고 이렇게 부릅니다. 자, what about a detectorist?
These are people. It's their as it mentions amateur. It's their hobby. They use a metal detector, which is this special machine. I've seen people using them, and they try to find valuable objects in the ground, especially in Britain, where they have such a long history and treasure is found. I've seen people in farmers' fields walking around with these things when I'm there.
그렇군요.
Yeah.
네, 디텍터리스트가 금속 탐지기를 들고 다니는 사람인데요. 금속 탐지기가 영어로는 metal detector예요. 그래서 그거 하는 사람이니까 우리가 dentist, artist 하는 것처럼 뒤에 ist 붙여서 detectorist라고 부릅니다. All right.
It looks fun. I wouldn't mind trying it one day when I'm there. Yeah, it looks kind of fun.
You'll find some old
Yeah,
coins.
I don't know how expensive metal detectors are. I don't know if you're able to rent them.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm going to look into that next time.
You should. 자, 제가 다시 읽어보겠습니다. A hoard of 1,000-year-old coins discovered by an amateur detectorist has sold for 4.3 million pounds, or about 7.7 billion won, and is set to be displayed at the British Museum. Let's move on to the final headline.
New research shows that a 3.2 billion-year-old asteroid impact, which triggered worldwide destruction, may have actually benefited early life by acting as a giant fertilizer bomb, providing essential nutrients to the dominant bacteria and archaea of the time.
약 32억 년 전 지구의 충돌에 세계 파괴를 초래한 운석이 실제로는 거대한 비료 폭탄처럼 작용해 당시 지배종 박테리아와 세균류에 필수 영양소를 제공하는 등 지구 초기 생명체들에 도움이 되었을지 모른다는 새로운 연구 결과가 발표됐습니다. Tell us more, Ray.
Well, according to this new study, this meteorite, which was known as S2, which was actually 4 times the size of Mount Everest. 4 times the size of Mount Everest. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
Struck near present-day South Africa, and it was up to 200 times bigger than the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs.
Goodness.
So massive.
Wow.
So according to the research, there were actually big increases in the number of organisms that fed off the elements, namely phosphorus and iron, after the event. They say that iron was likely stirred up from the ocean into shallow waters because there was a tsunami. This asteroid, they believed, went into the ocean and caused this huge tsunami. And then the phosphorus was brought to the planet by the meteorite itself. Now, the experts are saying that this shift toward iron favoring bacteria is a key piece of the puzzle for understanding early life on the planet.
Yeah, it looks like it benefited Earth, and Earth benefited
Right.
from this explosion.
If you benefit from something, or if someone benefits from something, you're helped by it. It's a positive effect.
Yes. 득을 본다라는 뜻이 있습니다. 그래서 it looks like Earth benefited from this explosion. Or you could say the explosion benefited Earth. 자, 그다음에 essential nutrients.
If anything is essential, it's necessary, it's needed.
Yeah.
And then nutrients are the substances that plants and animals and people need in order to live and grow. That's why we eat food for nutrients.
그렇죠. essential이라는 건 필수적이다. nutrient는 영양소. 그래서 필수 영양소 essential nutrients. 다시 읽어보겠습니다. New research shows that a 3.2 billion-year-old asteroid impact, which triggered worldwide destruction, may have actually benefited early life by acting as a giant fertilizer bomb, providing essential nutrients to the dominant bacteria and archaea of the time. Right, well, that's it for the headlines.